All right, we are back, everyone. And we have started the recording. So, and we're gonna have good reception this time, so you'll be able to view it later. So I'm going to introduce Paul, but I found out there were some people for show and tell that have Issey Miyake garments they made. So we are going to introduce those folks and then Paul. So you wanna come on over with your gorgeous dresses and I will help hold one up. Yeah, there we go.
Come into the light.
Eileen has some beautiful, beautiful dresses. She is wearing one that looks just like this. You're gonna see in a second.
Wow.
Stunning.
And it's the same as this one, except this is more like a daytime dress.
And you're gonna be right here on this part.
And that's my evening dress, which I've had for a while. And it's so easy to wear. It's probably the most flattering dress I've ever put on because it just flows off you. Just like Issey Miyake is so well known for just the way his clothes just flow. Like those wonderful things with all the pleats that you just pull over your head and suddenly you have this incredible outfit. Anyway, I just wish we had more of these patterns, more of these things.
Why don't we have you,
That's a pattern for that.
okay, and why don't we have you circle around so they can see it from all angles?
Give me
Very slowly though, very slowly.
yeah, it's fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. It's pretty simple. It's good. It's good. Don't put that up there, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
All right, and then do you want to show that one?
And this is one of his jackets from, this stuff is
Hold that in
like,
front of you, darling. Hold it in front of
this
you.
stuff is
Thank you.
like
Hold the mic to your mouth.
12, 15 years old, something like that, long time. I still have a whole bunch of his patterns at home, some of which I've never even made yet, because they're so complicated.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
turn it
Let me see
around.
the back.
Turn it around. Very cool.
Really nice.
Very cool.
All right, thank you. And it looks like we have one more person with the garment on. Would you like to come up and share with us?
That looks familiar too.
Watch the cords.
Watch the words right there. And then back to Mark.
Hi, Patty Bristow again. This is the Patty Bristow again. This is the Vogue 1328. And this is both pieces from that the same pattern. The jacket is a raw silk, and the tunic underneath is in a wool blend, and I actually put inserts into the sides of it because the shoulders fit and the body was a little narrow for me. So it has an opening as part of the pattern in the under sleeve, and so it was easy just to add a panel on the sides.
Thank you very much. And is yours Issey Miyake?
No, but it's a designer who is influenced by his pleating technique.
Okay, we'll do it in like 20 seconds. How about that?
Okay, this jacket I got as a gift from
That's
Marty
right.
Manzo.
So
Yeah,
right
it's just
behind
fine.
that mark right
It's
there.
fine.
There we go.
I got this jacket from Marty Manzo, and it's a designer who is in San Francisco who does pleated garments. This was a gift, and you can see the kind of technique that he was really famous for, which was the pleats.
Gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that. All right, thank you guys. And without any further ado, Paul Gallo, who has the distinction of being a person who people have come up to me and said, you can have Paul back every single year. What you want to know about this presentation is it was a last minute request to him about 2 months ago because what we were planning on doing didn't happen. So he put together this program just for us at our request. And this is his second time here this year. So maybe we'll have him twice a year. I don't know, but we've had him twice a year and we'll have him next year too. All right, come on, Paul. And Paul's in San Francisco. We've got your own mic, so I'm gonna step aside. Oh, and do you want to make an announcement about what's for sale?
Certainly.
Okay.
Good morning. I think my mic is on, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yes, I had a really good time. I'm very glad that Michelle asked me to do this. I always like to see Miyake. But now I know, I did the deep dive, and so now I know everything about him. So I mean, he's even more of a genius than I thought he was. And I'm very excited to share all of this info with you. Today I did bring two things that are mine. One of them is my invention, the Gallo sewing clips that came out in 2010. Kevin has these back on the back table. I also, during the pandemic, when all work seemed to stop, and I was like, how can you work for 40 years and have nothing to do? Very shocking. And I ended up I came to fashion as an illustrator before I knew how to make clothing. And so I came out with a coloring book of all my fashion illustrations from childhood until now. So there's a little bit of a story in it. There's 50 drawings in it. They're all black and white. So I don't know if any of you like to color, but I love to color. It's extremely relaxing. And there are some affirmations in here too. Like when I create, I have little affirmations on my sewing machine in my bedroom, on the bathroom mirror to just, deal with life. And so when we were putting this together, some people that were helping me do this said, what about all the sayings that are up in your apartment? Can we put those with the drawing? So it's affirmations, it's illustrations, it's a little bit of a story. This is also 25 and also back on the table with Kevin. And I will be signing books today. Like when we first came out with the books and did the campaign, there were certain prices for the books and also signed books. So anybody who wants a book, I will certainly sign it to you today. I am also wearing a Miyake. This jacket is a Issey Miyake. It's a very basic workwear coat, as you can tell, right? But it's done in suede, so I'm always afraid to wear this and touch it. And I've always thought that, okay, if I get any stain on it, I'll just draw on it because I always draw on all my clothing. And but then I'm afraid to draw on it because it's his. And I'm like, this is one of the only things I own that is still in immaculate condition because I'm kind of afraid to wear it. So today I was like, I must wear this. And also it's like probably the most toned down thing I've ever worn in public. I'm usually like reeking of color or it's something sequin or ridiculousness.
We were waiting.
And so also out of respect to him, I'm extremely beige today.
Not normal, yeah.
Right? But I feel so comfortable too. It's also really like nothing is reverberating, right? I feel extremely calm. So it's very nice. So my friend Hazel and I went on a deep dive and have put this together for you today. So I hope you enjoy it. Is just my advance the arrow?
Yes.
Yep. Is that correct? And do I aim it at your?
Don't have to aim it. Just
Okay.
click it.
God willing.
Okay, or maybe not.
So there are some. We'll start off with my first quote because I really like his quotes. The one thing I discovered about him is what a humanist he is and what a lovely, lovely person. And it's rare that somebody who is so nice and so artistic is so successful. So it's also very inspiring that he had so many companies under his own company. And you'll hear his story, but I love that he said, I designed thinking that humans are wonderful.
We're not.
Do you want to advance?
Let me take a look at this.
Maybe should I go like this?
Let me take a look at the button because it was working for me earlier.
Okay.
Ah,
Oh,
that button.
he's more manly.
Go ahead.
My nails are too long.
Yeah, have you seen his nails? Wait a
Have you
minute.
seen my nails?
I know why they're not painted at Issey Miyake was born on April 22nd, 1938 in Hiroshima, Japan. Originally named Kazunaro Miyake, he wanted to be a dancer, and his sister's fashion magazines were what got him interested in clothing. Issey actually means firstborn son in Japanese, so that's what his nickname is. His real name is not Issey, but he always used that. His family was killed in the atomic bomb drop of World War II when he was only 7. With creative perceptions, he began making various forms of art and was a student at Tama Art University in Tokyo when he created his first collection in 1963, The Poem of Material and Stone. And so he was doing artwork, and then also some clothing was involved in that, and then he got the idea to start making clothing from that. In 1965, Issey moved to Paris to study at École Chambre Syndicale de la Couture Parisienne. In 1966, he becomes an assistant at Guy Laroche and is exposed to master garment creators. This is where he really sees how clothing can be made. This is where he first is exposed to master dressmakers, draping, and all of that. These outfits on the right, the cover of L'Officiel, are by Guy Laroche from the year that Issey worked there. He is heavily inspired by the work of Madeleine Vianney. I'm sure some of you are aware of the grandmother of draping, Vianney, who worked on bias of the fabrics, who was a designer inspired by draping one piece of cloth to make a garment. Vianney's work with simple shapes like the circle, square, or triangle will become Miyake's trademark concept. When he came out, you'll see later on when he came out in 1999 with his new machinery, he called his line APOC, which is for a piece of cloth. Oh, did I miss the? Let's see the last. Yeah, I talked about Vianney. And then, oh, there we go. In did I say? Why do I feel like I missed that part? He also, yeah, oh gosh, that's what I wanted to say. In 1968, he works for Givenchy and is inspired to unite people after seeing the riots in Paris. While he's working at Givenchy, the riots in Paris break out. I cannot believe how everybody is acting towards each other. And this is a huge inspiration for him when he says, I'm going to unite people through clothing. Aha. Love this. In 1969, Issey moves to New York City to study and works for Jeffrey Bean. He is very inspired by the art and fashions happening there at the time of social revolution. He's very inspired in New York City by artists and designers alike. This is a look from Jeffrey Bean from 1969, which is a beaded bolero vest and then satin gingham top and skirt. Whenever I do research, I always try to look for images that are not the most famous images. And so we couldn't stop laughing at this photo. We had a whole bunch of things and I just kept coming back to this saying, no, it's this one. Like, I just want to put that on. In 1972, Issey comes out with What is Body Wear? I love this photograph of him. Fashion show in Tokyo, and in 1973 he shows in Paris for the first time. He has shown collections twice a year in Paris ever since, and he has won Designer of the Year a few times in America and in Paris. He's actually gotten awards all over the world. In 1976, he mounts a show called Issey, Miyake, and 12 Black Girls. I have never heard of this. We did find some of the images of it, and one of the models was an unknown Grace Jones. So I chose the image where she is wearing Miyake because I know a lot of things about Grace Jones. I did not know that. I knew she was a model. My favorite story of her is when she got a Revillon coat and went to a really famous, very high-end dinner in Paris during Fashion Week. And so she arrives in her Revillon coat, sits down for dinner and takes it off and is completely nude and ate dinner completely naked. That's my favorite Grace Jones. And she was just here in the Bay Area. Actually, she just played in Berkeley like 2 weeks ago. Let's go. Yeah, maybe you'll hit it for me. There we go. In 1981, he comes out with the plantation line. He used dyeing and weaving techniques on the brink of extinction and made them modern. Like Vianney, his central concept is one piece cloth. And I actually found this Macy's ad from New York with the release of his plantation line. This is a jumpsuit. Can you put it in? Great. In 1982, he designs a collection called Body Works, Fashion Without Taboos. There are cast breastplates of polyurethane laminated polyester, rattan cages. The rattan cage on the photograph on the left also had a hat that went with it. and wire forms. It was shown in Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, and Tokyo. He won the Neiman Marcus Award in Dallas that year and the Best Foreign Designer Award from the CFDA in New York, which is the Council of Fashion Designers of America. The one on the right is an extremely famous piece. In 1985 and 1986, he won the Oscar de la Renta Award in Paris, and Miyake introduces the Permanente line. Issey begins a collaboration with the iconic fashion photographer Irving Penn. And so this is one of the Penn photographs, which I think is so beautiful. Hazel does not like this photo. She thought it was very menacing. She said, I see it as dark, and I saw it as like an angel or as like a flower about to open. I saw it as extremely delicate and beautiful. Also that he had put a human inside of a cocoon, like a butterfly, like about to emerge, so. The one thing I was really flabbergasted at was that even though it's so much later in Irving Penn's career, you could tell they were his photographs. They're so different than every other photograph of Miyake's work. And there are a few more of them, like these. The puffer coat on the left. And then on the right, this is actually made out of fishing line that is bound in cotton bias. So it's very soft, but there's a lot of structure in it. And his one-piece cloth concept, while he recognizes came from the kimono, he also has stated that he knows it's from Indian culture, Roman culture, the Greeks, but he was inspired by it, but he did it completely different than everybody else did it. Also designed machinery. He was just unbelievable in how his brain worked. Here are some more Irving Penn photographs. The gold lame paper coats on the left, and the extreme pleating on the right, you may notice, looks like a Fortuny gown. Mariano Fortuny was a designer in the beginning of the 20th century in Italy, and Miyake was obsessed with that pleat technique, but came about it in a completely different way, where Fortuny was doing it, wrapping it around broomsticks. And while Miyake did use twisting and folding methods, this type of fabric was actually sent through a machine. And I don't know if you've ever seen the footage of them, but the machines are humongous. And what they would do is they would fold the fabric in a certain way first, sometimes lengthwise, sometimes on the cross grain, sometimes on the bias. And then they would put it between two pieces of paper and send it through this. He liked using polyester because polyester held the pleats so perfectly. This was permanent pleating in certain fabrics. And it would go through the machine and then they would unwrap it and then put it on. That's why when you see these things that defy gravity and stand off the body, the other thing that he did was he would pleat the garments after they were sewn. So the fabric was not pleated first and then the clothing was constructed. Actually, the clothing was constructed and then sent through the pleater. So that was also one of his innovations. In 1988, there was an exhibition called Aoun at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, where pleating was introduced in lightweight polyester that expands and floats. He was one of the first globally influential designers to find creative uses for the latest technologically advanced synthetics being produced in Japan. If any of you are textile junkies like me, you know that the most amazing fabrics have come out of Japan, right, for a long time. And so when he was first starting, he was fascinated by all the technology. And so this show in particular was one of his most artistic. I love that he always would blend the art and the fashion together. He didn't see it as separate. Miyake believed in ease of movement and care of clothing, right? He wanted it to be easy to care for, easy to live in, easy to wear. He believed the space between the person and the garment was important and ever changing. Balenciaga had this same idea when he was draping. Balenciaga was obsessed with the idea of the space between the garment and the wearer, and that the woman would look extremely dressed up but feel very, very, very comfortable in whatever she was in. And Miyake was like this as well. He wanted ease of movement, ease of form. Issey utilized the latest technology to create pleats very similar to those of the Italian designer Mariano Fortuny at the beginning of the 20th century. In 1991 is the twist collection. The fabric was folded, then pleated with heat between paper. He also originated pleating the garment after it was sewn. It took 8 meters of fabric to make one dress. He was made Commander de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres. You can tell I don't speak French. And my grandmother was French. She's probably so embarrassed right now. Come on, Grandma. By the French government. I love this image as well. This was, also what I liked about this was not only was it pleated and all put together, but you could see it's all circles. So he, like V&A, would have something that would either start out as a triangle or end up as a triangle, right? Start out as a circle, end up as it could either be his starting point or it could be the finishing point. But you can barely see the human underneath it, but you can definitely tell that somebody's in this dress. Now, this is how, there are many, many versions of it, but this is what it looks like when he begins. So here is a garment that is folded and then pleated in one piece. The hole in the center is for the head. And there are many variations on this if you look at through him. So many of these dresses that were the same exact concept do not look the same. He would change the textile, or he would change the fabric finish, or he would change the neckline, how it closed. So this, you would pick it up and all of those pieces would fall out and either become part of the hem, part of the shoulder, or a hood, right? They all had different things, but I really liked this flat picture. When I found this, they had another picture that where it was flat and then they were picking it up and then suddenly it was on a person, but it was so far away. I really like that you can see this up close. You can see the sheen on the fabric. You can see exactly how it's folded. Before we go through the pleater. In 1992, the Asahi Prize is awarded to him, and he released his first perfume, L'Odyssée, which was so successful. Like Chanel, it really fueled all of his research because they made so much money on the perfume. And the following year, he came out with a men's fragrance as well, and has had, you know, many, many different fragrances over the years. In 92, he also designed Olympic uniforms for Lithuania and had licensing deals for luggage, home furnishings, bicycles, hosiery, watches, and there was even Issey Miyake water thanks to Evian. And I thought, now, you have got to be very shrewd to get your name on a bottle of water if you are a designer. So can we all just applaud him for that? When I read that, I was like, you did what? I was like, very good. Hooray for you. He then released a men's fragrance, multiple fragrances for women, and developed a sensory element, the Shiseido, called a drop tissé. That same year, he did a collaboration with William Forsythe for Ballet Frankfurt. And it's all about movement, functionality, and utility. Forsythe said that Miyake can create an echo in harmony with the body's rhythms. Miyake was so impressed with the way the dancers moved in his clothing that he sent hundreds of samples to the company to try out. This was the beginning of him using dancers as fashion models. The following year, he comes out with Pleats Please, and from the first production, sent an entire box of Pleats Please clothing for the dancers to have. And we found a bunch of images of them, but I really love this image. If you've ever seen their choreography, it's very beautiful and organic. Pleats Please comes out in '93, and he was named Best Designer of the Year again for the second year in a row. He also received the Chevalier de l'Ordre National de la Légion d'Honneur. Miyake is inspired by stones, algae, and shells, and then uses technology to transform silk, cotton, polyester, bamboo, paper, and plastic into new surprising materials. He invented the fabrics and the machinery. The most human thing is to admire the human, no, I'm sorry. His quote is, the most important thing is to admire the human body and to admire humans. And I absolutely adore this photograph because you could see that the pleated fabric is sheer, it's also metallic. And while it does move and stretch, it also, this is one of the very few pictures I found where you actually see the body. But of course, she's dancing, so. In 1995, Beautiful Ladies comes out, his collection, and the dresses on the right came in many, many different colors and versions. They're based on circles that are all sewn together, large and small, and they bounce when walking, so they were referred to as the bouncing dresses. On the left, this is a very thin mylar clear film that he then laid vinyl onto, and that it was the color pieces were adhered to the vinyl in the process of being pleated. Yes?
The Beautiful Ladies, the pleated dresses, could they sit in those? Some of these things look like you could go to a party and stand, but you couldn't sit.
Oh, the dresses on the right, the bouncing dresses, I really doubt you could sit in them. And if you did, have you ever worn a hoop?
Yes.
So what happens when you sit down? Ta-da! So this also, because they bounce, you could pick it up.
Okay.
So I'm sure you could pick it up, sit in it, and drop it if you were, Tina Chow, who was obsessed with Fortuny and Miyake. But yes, I would not say they were as functional as they were innovative. Right? From 1996 to 1999, he had a guest artist series for Pleats Please. These are the 4 artists that he worked with. The Kai Guo Piang is on the far right, where there is dye. This is folded, it's dyed while it's folded. A bit like a Rorschach test, where you just drop the dye, so on the front, and then open that up. And then Tim Hawkinson is the dress on the left, which has the eyeballs on it. Nobuyoshi Araki, I believe, is the dress where the statue is upside down, with the person behind it hugging it on that pleated top. And Yasumasa Morimura is the one with the skirt up on top with the face on it. We couldn't find any other pictures of that garment. All pictures of the garment are cut off at the waist, so I don't know what was on the top of the blue skirt with the face on it, but the skirt was so lovely, but we could not find the entire garment on that. In 1998, Foundation Cartier pour l'Art Contemporain in Paris has a huge show called Making Things, which is a retrospective of his work. He has done a few shows over his lifetime where he mixed his influences, the actual garments, and all of that. He was very, very, very difficult to work with in that way because he was so exacting. So he would exhaust his staff, but he was quite amazing. And with his staff, he always referred to them as collaborators. So he always saw it as one gigantic effort of everything that was happening in his company. This is another quote of his. This is another shot from that same show, Making Things. Clothes are of no interest except insofar as they provoke sentiments and reactions in those who wear them. I create to express not my ego or personality, but to try to bring answers to those who are asking themselves questions about our ego and how we should live in it. This is the staircase dress. Miyake combined architecture, fashion, art, and technology like no other designer. I really love this concept here because it's so flowing, right? So flat, it looks like a staircase, but when you wear it, it would move and have many, many, many different effects, as you can imagine. This is also from the same show, and these are the gold paper coats that I showed you earlier, but I really like that they put them in an entirely gold papered environment room and then had them go in there, and they're doing battle. So in some of them you can't see the feet, and in some of them you can't even tell it's people interacting with each other. So that's why we chose this image, because you can see that there are 2 humans in there doing something with each other. And a journalist reviewing the show in Paris said, he has never ceased to search, interrogate, or scrutinize his materials, and he has drawn various replies and signs in order to design what might be the clothing of the future. And as you know, like all of the things that he did, are still around, right? In spring of 1999, he further explores the concept of one-piece cloth with APOC and designs machinery to engineer garments in a one-piece tube that is then finished in a variety of ways on the customer. So the tube would come up, be severed, and then would have some sort of shoulder or hood with treatment on it. I did like this image where they show the yarn going into the tube, coming out on the body, and then being made into separates. So this was also part of the exhibit at the show where he was trying to show what happens to the actual yarn itself and how it becomes a one-piece garment. This was part of the show when he released APOC, was to unite all of the models in one piece of cloth. And not only did they stand there, but they also walked. You guys may have seen this show. Issey worked with many fellow artists and referred to his team as collaborators. Society, living, joy, and happiness are his concerns as he decides to go into research. His company had so many lines by now, and he was doing so many different things. And so rather than, during his extreme fame, he could have had anybody come in as a guest star to design for him. But all of the people that have worked for him ever since this time, even to now, always come from in-house. He would always pick people who were already on his team to take over. So he had a designer take over his women's lines and his men's lines, and he went into research. This is the black version, and these dresses are all connected. This was also part of that show. And so I put these dresses last because they are black and we're sort of mourning him leaving his high post, even though he's still running the company. He turns over all production and design responsibilities to key team players. His company is doing multiple projects in multiple fields, and he is producing many different lines of clothing. Dodo, so the House of Miyake still has other innovations coming out of it, and Dodo is one of them. That's the nickname for it. And what it is it's the flexible urethane mesh that you can reshape. It's just one of the many innovations that continue to come out of Miyake's company. So that hat on the left, actually that whole thing can be transformed into many different shapes and folded. And then you can see on the right, there's a rougher version of the raffia hat and a really great multimedia mixed dress. In 2006, his collection became a permanent fixture at the Museum of Modern Art. He designed uniforms for Sony's factories and developed a friendship with Steve Jobs, who asked him to design for Apple. And while those uniforms never came to fruition, when Jobs asked Miyake for black turtlenecks, they were sent by the hundreds and became his signature look. I never knew that Steve Jobs' drag was was from Miyake. I never knew that. And I thought, my goodness, that man looks so boring, right? He's like, I'm not wearing anything. I'm only about technology. No, you're wearing Issey Miyake, bitch. I like you better already. So that was a really fun discovery. In 2019, the collection featured themes of nature on high-tech fabrics, and Miyake's products have become legendary and as popular as ever. The prices on these things are quite outrageous, right? I was like, wow, it really held its value. And all of his perfumes, it's incredible how financially successful he is for being such a brilliant artist. I love the textile on the left. You can see the pleating and the hand dyeing on that. I also love the circular concept on the outfit on the right. The collar looks like a shell, as does the top. So you can see the circle spinning in on itself, as well as the pleating and the dyeing happening. Now, we are up to, this is actually from spring 2023. Yes. So strangely enough, when I saw these images of things coming out for this spring, I thought this could be done by Madeline Miyake. This could be done by him. You can see the bias, you see the asymmetry, right? On the left is a top and pants, and on the right is a one-shoulder dress. Here you can see, I see reminiscences of other dresses on this one shoulder dress on the left with the pleating of the square on top of the loose shape. Also, this dress with the points coming out on the right is not only finely pleated, but has the points coming out like on many different outfits from the 80s and 90s. So it is very, it reminds me of how Lagerfeld had redone the House of Chanel. He went into the archives of Chanel and had done, you know, reissued versions of all of those classic pieces to keep her legacy alive. And so I thought, oh my goodness, this current, you know, whoever's on staff now are definitely looking through and making things, you know, influenced by the past. And this I really like. This was, these are knitwear. And they have a positive, negative space in them that changes the body shape slightly. I think that's actually it. Did I talk that fast through? I must have.
Yes.
All right. Any questions?
Paul, we do have one comment from our audience. There is Lakma at the full shot that dress.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, I read the same message. LACMA had
An image of the blue dress?
it was, which one was it, Kevin?
From Linda Wettenberger. Oh, the one which is only, where you had the skirt shot. You said you've never seen a full length.
Yes.
So,
LACMA has a full shot of the blue dress.
With the face.
Yeah, with the face.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
So you just have to go to Los Angeles to see it.
or you could go online and look at.
Exactly. So I brought a couple of garments that I'm going to show you as well.
Okay, well, that's.
So besides the Miyake jacket, I have brought,
It's,
oops, there we go. I've also brought, start off with this one. Now, I don't know if any of you know Sandra Erickson.
Oh, yes.
Familiar with her?
She's been here.
Awesome, love Sandra. I encountered Sandra Erickson when I first got to teach at City College. I was doing fashion illustration there. Sandra was doing draping. I was draping something on a mannequin. She was like, wow, you're a really good draper. I was like, thank you. I was like, well, you're the draping teacher, so you must be a really good draper too. And at the time, Sandra was getting ready to leave City College and I didn't know it. And so she said, well, you must love Madeline DNA. And I made the mistake of saying, who's that? She's like, oh, child, you're gonna come with me. And so she takes me to this other class where she's teaching DNA techniques. One of them is how to not eliminate any of the fabric. You have to use all of the fabric and you have to keep going on the mannequin and make it out of one piece of cloth. And so that's what this dress is. This was done 1920 style. So this is a slash and drop that creates this. The other thing was that we finished the edge of the fabric off before we draped. So that as we went in, you know, things that you couldn't hem or do anything like that was already done. So here a side seam is created just by having a stitch from under the arm down to the bottom, but this is all one piece of fabric, right? And then the cowl that happened, this cowl rolls up around the neck of the person. And then because you're just wrapping, we had to cut an armhole and self-bind it because there was no hole for the arm. And so this, you just kept going around the body with this. So this also, to me, was a combination of Miyake and VNA and the simplicity of it and the continuation of it.
So so you have one armhole and the other arm is in this fold. Oh.
It's just in the fold, so the arm just comes out, right? And yeah.
Could you repeat that question and show it to the right audience?
Certainly. So what she asked was, you have a bound armhole on one side, what is the other side? So the other side is simply that this was out, and this was out, and so I didn't want to chop the fabric off. So what I did was I just took it into the mannequin and stitched through both layers. So my armhole is actually just an opening in there. And so all of this gathering to create the cowl is just trying to get rid of fabric, right? And then, of course, this part did not work out very well. This is where the entire universe crashed together. So I was like, let's go find some vintage buttons. So of course I had 2 of them in a, in a box of God knows how many buttons I have. I'm sure you all probably have hundreds of buttons too. And so I thought that was just really sort of made it look a little more vintage, even though it was a new dress. And then the other one, I brought a couple of these. So since you guys are seamsters, I thought I would share this. So this is what is it, zero waste? Is that what we say?
Yeah.
Zero waste, where you have to use every bit of the fabric, right? So in my drinking class, we're doing sustainable projects, right? And so this was 2 scarves from Bali that are very, very thin silk. And so we had to keep going on the mannequin around and around and around. But they were, of course, a whole lot of it laying on the floor. So the part that had to get cut off for the hem is actually what became the sleeves. So one side got chopped off, became this sleeve, the other side got chopped off, became this sleeve. And then at the bottom, I couldn't figure out what to do, and I ended up sewing them together in a bizarre way, which turned the side seams into cowls. And so I had done this on a size 8 mannequin, which I am not a size 8, so I was like, oh rats, and I couldn't get the dress on, which is always frustrating when you make something and you love it, and then you're like, well, I don't want to wear it. So I made another one. I was like, wait a minute, there's more of that, because we had, like, this fabric came from somebody who was working in Bali and wanted me to design a line of clothing using Balinese silk. And then she disappeared. And so I had this box for years that had like 72 Balinese silk scarves in it. You might have to help me get in. I don't know if I can put this on with the head thing. We'll see. Yeah.
Wanna take your hat
Hopefully- Oh yeah, take the hat off, please. That would be great.
Glasses maybe even?
Yeah, maybe we'll get rid of those too. Just in case. All right. So there's a zipper on my neck, Michelle, so you'll help me with that.
Okay.
Good gravy. I hope I have this on right.
You're caught on your mic.
Yeah.
One thing at a time.
Are you?
Shoulder
Yeah,
seams
you're
zipper.
And then these tuck in. Right, this is the end of the border. So you can see it's like we even somehow managed, but the second one I could get the border on the wrist. So I was like, okay, well, we chopped the bottom. And then also because you guys, so I wanted to tell you that these cowls on the side, can you see all this action on camera?
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it all.
Go swanning around.
You want me to swan around?
Yeah.
I know how to do that. Right? So imagine like high heels and nothing on underneath. It's very, very good. I'm wearing this at Palm Springs. My friends just got a house down there and they're like, you have to come in a caftan. And I'm like, don't worry. I've got something for your house.
Paul, can we see the back?
Am I not?
No, can we see the back, please? Thank you.
Is my neck in?
Yes,
So yeah,
There you go.
is everything on?
yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love this thing. And it weighs nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's like thinner than a Kleenex. Okay, so this was the sewing mistake. So by now, of course, it's late in the day, right? And we're trying to put it together. And I accidentally sew the back piece of the border to the front instead of itself. And then that's what made the cowls. The cowls are a total accident. Like I didn't have a design at the bottom, you know? Isn't it weird? Like
It's
this
a good
is so
accident, yeah.
very, very, it's a very happy fashion accident. That's why. Very good job. So I think that is, yeah, that's all I brought today. So I hope that was good for you. I hope you learned something about Miyake that you have.
I've got the please dress with the face on it, if you'd like to put that up and see what it looks like.
Yes, I would love to see that, yes.
Okay, just a second.
And is it Linda who gave us that image?
Linda Wenzelberger.
Thank you, Linda.
Give me a second to screen share this so that.
Okay.
So that everyone else can see it. So this is what we saw in your picture.
Here.
Right.
So here's what we saw on the picture you had. There is another view that Lackman has. Okay, oh, come on.
There it is.
Oh, wow.
Lovely. Yeah, I adore drawing on textiles, and I'm very lucky that some of my illustrations got made into fabrics through a textile designer in San Francisco named Sandra Bonava. So I have about 6 fabrics of mine. So my dream of having the faces and all of that stuff and the figures on it, I now have my own like that. Now I just have to figure out how to pleat them, and I'll be like on my way. Because I love pleated fabric, I have just never known how to do it. You know?
So I have a thought. I'm interested in the patterns, the bow patterns that he did. Did you ever sew any of those?
I have not.
You have not. So we have a couple of people here who had, and I'm curious about that, what that experience was like. I had for years, I had a pattern with a great big coat, a beautiful coat, which I finally decided I was never gonna make, and so I gave it away. But could those of you who have sewn, Eileen, I think you had the 3 garments, would you be willing to come up and just share a little bit about what it was like to use those patterns?
They were fine.
Hold on 1 second, and I'll bring it back to
Bring
you.
it back. I'll pan.
Okay.
I'll pan.
They were just like any other Vogue pattern, pictures, showing you where the seams went, what it was very simple. You just, I'm not, a great engineer, and I have problems with spatial relations, but I found it was possible to do these without too much trouble at all. The only thing you have to be careful about always with a pattern is getting a material that's suited for the pattern.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can have all kinds of difficulty. But other than that, I also have at home a whole bunch of patterns from Montana, from all these designers that they used to have in Vogue.
Yes.
When you talk about this one coat, there's this incredible Montana coat that's like a gigantic thing that goes around the coat. I have that still hanging in the closet. It's so heavy, I don't even like to leave the house. Okay, I'll try to put one coat. But they're fabulous, and they're all done in the typical Vogue pattern way that you have no trouble doing it. It's not like these European patterns that show up saying, okay, here, just do this. Okay, fine. How do you do it? Those sit in the closet and never get done. They cost a fortune, like $30 or something. These are fine. If you can get them online, if you can find them somewhere that they have in the past, some kind of place where they keep old patterns, I would recommend trying it because they're all great.
Yeah, you can find those patterns online quite easily. I did bring a pattern today to show you guys as well, so I'll show you that. Did anybody else sew with a Miyake?
Yeah.
Do you want to
say just a word?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I found it very easy to use the Vogue pattern
And,
to just follow the directions. Because I've sewn so much that a lot of times with the pattern, I'll just cut it and I'll just sew it without looking at the pattern directions. But with the Miyake there's a little bit of origami involved. So you want to really follow it step by step. But the Vogue did a good job on laying that all out.
Because when I first was studying fashion, I came in as an illustrator, but they said you will get much more work because you're already drawing clothing in rows and you're coordinating colors and fabrics, and that's what designers do. And so I was like, well, but I don't know how to sew. And so the reason I don't use professional patterns is because from such a young age, they were like, you have to make the pattern this way, the grain line this way. So I've always made my own patterns. But you all may know Sandra Betsina, right? You guys know her? Cool. So I've worked with her for a few years before she retired, probably my favorite boss ever. I call her my sewing fairy godmother. And so she asked me to do some patterns for her that were based on those shapes like rectangle, circle, square, and I brought one of them. And I also, when Miyake passed, this past summer, and were any of you on the Power Sewing newsletter that Sandra puts out? Okay, then I'm not repeating that, well, maybe some of you. And so Sandra put up a story about how she met him, and what her adventure was with him. This was a sweater that was actually, it looks flat on the table like a square. But what it is it was a rectangle. And they had cut the waist out, so it actually looks like this. So this is the original side seam. This is the wrist. This is the other wrist. The wrists are two different shapes, and this is the neckline. And you cut this on the fold, or you can seam it. And when it's all done, it looks like a square on the table. And she's like, Paul, can you pattern this? And I was like, this is insanity. But I was like, because it's you, I'll figure it out. So this is actually the rib portion that goes around the bottom. So this is how you would seal it off. And this is the wrist bindings. These are just rectangles because they're cut on the cross grain. I also gave myself some measurements and a little cheat sheet of how it looks because I was like, when I pull this out later, I'm never going to remember what she said. I don't know if you guys do this on your patterns, but I definitely will always have the little notes on there of like, what is this? Okay, so Sandra was reviewing. She was the sewing columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. Remember what a column was, right? When I read that, I was like, wow, really sewing columnist, right? So great. And so she was testing a Miyake pattern for her column. That was her subject matter at the time when he happened to come to San Francisco. So she's like, well, I am a columnist and I'm going to get to meet him, right? So she says, I would like to interview you. I'm a columnist. I'm going to make your sample and do a review of your pattern. And he says, great. And so she shows up with it in leather. She's like, I decided to surprise him and make it in leather because Sandra loves to sew leather. And so they become fast friends. He's like, this is really fantastic. So she sees his thing here. And then she plans a trip to Japan, just happened to coordinate with when he's opening his store. So she says, I'm going to be in Tokyo at blah, blah day. And he ends up sending a bouquet of flowers to her hotel, you know, because she's a journalist, right? And then she gets to go to the store. So she was just thrilled out of her mind for that to happen to her. And of course, you know, I'm thrilled for her as well because she's one of the happiest people I've ever met. I've never worked with somebody that could really be in a room full of so many people and keep the mood up the entire time. And we would do different jobs together. And then, you know, I'd still be draping on people or doing whatever. And she's like, come on, let's go, it's time to eat. I'm like, we're not done yet. And she's like, no, come on, let's go. I'm ready to go. And I'm like, this is your gig. You know, like, you need to be here till the end. She was so funny. She's like, that's enough, Paul, we've done enough today. Come on, let's go. I was like, it's like a 7-year-old, you know, it's like, but she's fully adult, but also she just has that like so much fun. Fascination like a child, you know. Yes.
Question?
I have a number of questions.
Okay.
First, do you have a photograph of this sweater actually made up?
No, I don't. No, I didn't make the sample. I only did the pattern.
I see.
And then I was doing something else this week for somebody and was digging through my pattern rack when I found that. And I was like, oh yeah, the square sweater, I should bring that for the lecture because some of those people will be pattern makers and they'll understand what that is. But I still have not made that.
I also wanted to comment that Sandra Betsina and myself took a workshop with Sandra Erickson. And it was on V&A. I still have Sandra's notes that she gave out on V&A. She was fabulous. Do you know what happened to her?
I don't, and I am looking for her now because the last thing I have on her is the Center for Pattern Design that she did up in Sonoma. And
She moved.
yeah, and lost touch with her after that. But the last time I saw her in person was at a V&A. Did you go to the one that was at the Dion Museum? That's the last time I saw Sandra Erickson in person, was when she did a V&A presentation with the miniature dolls and the larger garments as well.
Yes, I belong to the Textile Art Council.
Right, so maybe you had
Yeah.
brought her in there
The other
for
thing,
that.
I saw an Issey Miyake exhibit for the first time in San Francisco before they built the MoMA. The MoMA was in one of the buildings facing the Opera House on the 2 floors.
That's right.
And they
That's
had
right.
an exhibit of his work. And it's the first time I saw it. It really impressed me. That must have been the 1970s.
Yes, I was very surprised that when he got his first international thing, it was New York, LA, Tokyo, and San Francisco. That's why I put that in the presentation today, because I was like, why was he here? Of all the cities in the world, right? How interesting that if there were only 4 and the others are, much more well known.
I was also able to see some of his shops in Tokyo when I took a textile tour of Japan with a small group. And I was very impressed also by the great variety of ideas that were presented. The other thing is that as I've seen the latest things, when they announced that he died, they also showed the latest things of Issey Miyake. I assume he didn't design them.
I don't know. I don't know how it was towards the end for him. I don't know if he was ill. That was the most interesting thing about this, because so many designers, especially from the 60s, 70s, 80s, became personalities, right? And their lifestyle was as big as their brand. I found no personal information on him. None. No boyfriend, no girlfriend, no children, no daughter, nothing personal. It was all of it, even through Wikipedia, any place I went. So I was just like, also from the era that he's from and the country that he's from, it would be something that you did not speak about if you were gay. So I just thought, if he was traditional Japanese and had ended up being married, that would have been public knowledge. So since there is no public knowledge around his personal life, I just thought, does anybody here have any inkling as to anything about Issey's personal life? Yeah, I thought how rare to be that open about your creativity, to be that open about everything. Like you said, you were so impressed by the amount of ideas, right? Always a forward thinker, always trying to come up with what hasn't been done yet, or how can I improve upon what I've done already, was his train of thought, right? And so I thought of how ironic that his mind was so open in that way. And yet when it came to him, like, no, I'm not offering any information.
And another comment, you said that you like to draw on your fabrics. And you immediately reminded me of the great designer Sandra Rhodes, who made all of her fabrics, designed all of her fabrics and all of the clothing as well. I have a number of books of her work, and I've seen her work in person, and I was extremely impressed. Do you know her work?
Incredible, yes. And I got to see, she did the costumes for the San Francisco Opera for Aida, I believe. Did anybody see that show? It was all Egyptian themed costumery. I would say it's gotta be at least 10 years ago now. But Zandra did that. Yeah, but I am familiar with her work because of fashion history, of course, you know, she's so incredible. Yeah, and you know, something else about the pleats, Mariano Fortuny did it first, but there was also a huge trend in the 1970s of polyester pleating going on by someone named Mary McFadden, who really did a basic knockoff of the Delphos. I mean, it was a literal copy of Fortuny's work. And I find that it's very funny that as time has gone by, no one ever mentions her name except me. Like hardly anybody knows that she had such a huge success with all of the pleating as well,
Wasn't she a
right?
San Francisco designer?
Did she start here?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that she started here, because when she was in the 70s, like I'm from New York, so I didn't get to San Francisco till 91. And so McFadden was doing that in the 70s and 80s, and then when I was at FIT, she was having a huge success and was doing the real leaves, dipped in gold jewelry to go with her pleating. And then someone exposed like, well, all of your clothing is a copy of Fortuny. And then her press started to change at that time. And then she was about 50 at the time and got a 25-year-old boyfriend. And then married him. And then some sort of public scandal happened and then she disappeared. Like the clothing was gone, she was gone, everything disappeared from the newspaper. So I'm not really sure does anybody know what became of Mary McFadden? But her clothing was polyester pleated. You know, it just wasn't very innovative. It was more of a knockoff.
In 1955, I had graduated the Cooper Union in art and decided to go out and see the world on my own with a backpack and a car sack.
You're way ahead of your time. Girls were not doing that in 1955.
Some of my friends were.
All right.
I had the first knockoff of Mary McFadden, who knocked off Fortuny. I had a pleated navy blue dress. It was sleeveless and it was tied in the waistline, and it was drip dry, and I could wash it in a basin and hang it up and wear it the next day, which I did very frequently.
Oh, yes, that was a point
That
of
sounds like fun.
care that I did want to mention from Miyake's clothes about the care was his twist collection. And the pleats were invented thinking that he was going to, because they were twisting the clothing in the process. And then he realized like, oh my goodness, you can twist this up, put it in a suitcase. And when you get to where you're going, you take it out, it looks the same. So part of that also was travel. He was thinking of, these are very easy to travel and you can get there and just pop it out. That was part of the twist and fold concept. Yes.
Stand up, please.
The list of people influenced by Miyake must be miles long, but I was thinking, especially with that circle dress with all the flower shapes.
Yes.
Do you know if there's any direct link between him and Iris Van Turpin, who's working now?
I would say that she has more Issey Miyake damage than anybody. She's the modern day version of him. She's, to me, the only person that's working right now that's actually a real designer and innovator. And the same thing with the machinery and she's not afraid of chemicals, neither was Miyake, you know. I mean, he made, you know, that red bustier that you saw is urine, polyurethane. I mean, it couldn't be more toxic, right? Have any of you worked in taffeta? I have a silk taffeta outfit that accidentally went into the washing machine last week. Go ahead, laugh. Yes. But guess what it smelled like when it came out? Gasoline. Like it was drenched in it. Like I can't keep it in the house. Like I'm getting rid of everything else I own that's silk taffeta. I had no idea that they hide petroleum products in our clothing. No idea. Right. But how did you know?
Just a guess.
Really? You were just guessing?
I've had clothes that had that smell and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from and I just got rid of it.
No, literally, I took it out and I was like, what happened to this? Why is this in a washing machine? Because it's like, it's this huge outfit, so it has like a very tight waistband and the skirt is like, as big as a cloth, So the whole thing just crumpled. So now I'm like, oh, it's disaster drag. It's like all like, it's a horizontal stripe, but now it's all crinkled like it looks like it was on purpose. Because the whole thing is just like, I don't know, throw some blood on it and call it Halloween.
Disaster dragons.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And and think about what you want to do for us next year.
Well, apparently you have good ideas, so this was really good for me too, so I'm glad to do it for you guys, but it also informs me, right? I know way more about him than I ever did. And I admire him much, much, much more than I ever did already. Because when you do fashion history, there's so many people to cover, right? Of course I have a few favorites, and V&A is definitely one of them. But I never connected him to her. I had no idea that he was as inspired by her as I was. No idea, right? And he also had the same kind of workroom as her, It's a family. Everybody is in this together. I am not the leader and I'm not talking down to you, or you, right? Do you know that V&A was the first designer that ever gave health benefits to her staff?
Wow.
The idea of having health insurance for your workers came from her. She was first. And anyone on staff in V&A's camp and at that company, as soon as the season was over, they were allowed to use all of the fabrics for the previous season. If anybody in the workroom got married, the entire staff made the wedding gown on the person with
Oh.
V&A's help, using all the materials from the workroom so that they would buy nothing. And the entire staff would, for the weddings, they would do this when people had children, when people got married. So V&A, established a business model that he also was very inspired by. He did that as well. Very good care of his people.
And what a remarkable man, really. I mean, to lose your whole family in Hiroshima and then be so interested in serving people is truly, to me, truly remarkable to come from that background and be who he was with the quotes that you told us.
Yeah, such a humanitarian. And to me, I've noticed this also, that if somebody has something really tragic happen in their life and it doesn't kill them or put them in an insane asylum, it makes you like a genius. Like if you can take that darkness and spin it like he did, like somebody like Chanel. Chanel also has a completely tragic story, but she knew what to do with it, right? She took that energy and she knew what to do with it, and he did as well. Very interesting how he morphed into who he was and had that gentle worldview, had that, why are people fighting, what is wrong with people? I'm sure that the riots, he must have had PTSD from growing up in Hiroshima, right? So, but we didn't know what PTSD was then. So he somehow put it into creativity, which I think, when I was doing the coloring book, they were asking me, is this book more autobiographical or is this book more about creativity as healing? And I'm like, it's much more about creativity as healing, because when you draw, you feel better. You all know, if you make a t-shirt, you feel amazing, right? It's a t-shirt, who cares? I care, right? Because I made it and I'm wearing it, right? So when you make your own something, that's why there's a group of you together, right? You're united by sewing, right? And so when I teach a sewing class, I'm always like, they're like, this is very difficult. And I'm like, yeah, this is not the part where you get the good feeling. The learning is not the good feeling. It's the feeling of accomplishment, right? And if you can just finish the project, whether you like the project or not, if you can finish it, you're still going to get that rush that comes with completion, right? And so I think that the creativity is what healed him of that childhood trauma. Yes.
How many classes do you teach now?
At the moment,
Are you teaching?
3.
Okay,
and then 3 clerk,
and,
which is a lot.
and new semester coming up pretty soon?
I'm
Before
only about
COVID.
I'm about halfway through, so
Before COVID, I was looking up your classes and then we had all the shutdown and I'm going, I really would like to come up and take a class or two.
I've been online for 2 years now, so I'm very good at teaching online,
Yeah,
which is
I like it.
completely bizarre.
I like in person
But
better.
I had the advantage that other teachers didn't have, in that when they sent us home, I have a workroom. You know, I make clothing, so I have mannequins, machines, tables, I had so other teachers went into a complete panic. They're like, I can't teach from home. And I'm like, oh, I could, I have a huge studio that's just for making stuff, there's just fabric everywhere. So the worst thing for me was when you aim the camera, it's like, what are they seeing that's on the floor? Like we spent the whole first year like, oh no, look at the background. Oh no, look at the background. I was like, I am such a slob, because you guys know when you sew, you're like this.
Yep,
That doesn't work on camera. So it's really funny now when people come over, they're like, oh my God, this place is so clean. I'm like, on camera, girl, I'm on camera all the time. So like, don't look at the other rooms, but this room looks pretty cool, right? I've learned that background counts on film.
For those people who don't know where you're teaching, where are you teaching?
Oh, okay, so it's through City College of San Francisco in the fashion department. And I do an intro to sewing class that takes people from hand sewing till you introduce a machine. And that has been very funny because usually they're all on the same machine in one room. So now that we're remote, everyone has a different machine. So I'm like, we're gonna learn about machines today. So I'm like, put your camera on your machine. Okay, your bobbin's there, yours is this is how you make a bobbin, this is how you thread. Okay, next. So it's like a 5-hour-long class because we go through every single machine. So there are some advantages online. I've just gone back for the first time to do a sewing class with a woman who booked one in person, and 2 days before it started had a complete panic attack and couldn't do it. And so my supervisor called me and said, hi, Annette is having a meltdown and is not gonna go in the building, and this is starting in 2 days, and none of the sewing teachers can do it. And I was like, I'll do it. I was like, oh, let's see what it's like to go back in a building with people, But I have to teach for 5 hours with a mask on, which is completely bizarre because they're all like on top of you, And now I'm also right now doing illustration. So I do draping, illustration, and sewing. And usually, not that many, but I don't know, this year got busy, so I hope you either join me online or in person. But we were going back in person in January.
Cool.
And then last week they canceled the whole thing.
Again? Yeah.
They cannot stop changing their mind. They should call it City College of Let's Change Your Mind San Francisco.
I do like
Or just Corruption College of San Francisco, just get it over.
I like in person much better, just the personal interaction.
Yeah, so apparently instead of January, that will be coming in
September,
fall of
August or September.
It's August.
Okay.
Fall of 2023 will be the next time you have public access.
Tell them not to change their mind so I can sign up.
I don't tell those people anything. I go like this, like when they had somebody going for the head of the department a couple of years ago, my coworkers are like, oh, you would be so great at this. And I was like, you can shove it. I would never ever do that to myself. Never.
No,
I'm not an administrator.
you would be very unhappy.
I already would have killed people or they would have killed me. I'm from New York, I can't sit in a meeting and listen to people talk about all the corrupt things that they do and then not say it out loud.
You wouldn't be teaching anymore because you get so fed up, yeah.
I'd be long gone.
All right, and don't forget that there are 2 things for sale back there, and Paul is signing if you get the coloring book.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. For those of you who are thinking you might like to sew Issey Miyake, there's always eBay, but a lot of people sew patterns on Etsy as well. And probably there are other sources, so I know I'm thinking about it at this point. Yeah, there's a lot of them. And then we do have enough time to wrap up with the show and tell that we skipped in the beginning. If there's anybody who would like to show their outfit, Carol.
You're fine.
Carol Parker, this is my latest dye work. It is eye dye with jacquard Granny apple green. Pigment.
Green is good.
One of the things about ice dye is that it can break down into its component colors.
You're fine. You're good. There you go.
I'm Susie Lilly, and I didn't speak up earlier, but I'm wearing an original Issey Miyake plantation at the top. Wow. So it's really, I intend to copy it at one point or another in my lifetime, but I may not have time, who knows? So.
I'm Marilyn Stauffer.
Over here, dear. Right there.
I'm Marilyn Stauffer, and Monday is Canadian Thanksgiving, and I'm wearing my maple leaf tartan skirt that I made, and my scarf is ice dyed.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Not a sewer, so it has to be simple for me to do it. This is a really simple reduced pineapple stitch, and it's 2 very long rectangles sewed up the back. I figure when I inevitably spill on the front, I'll just turn the shirt around. And then when I spill on that, I'll turn it inside out.
That's awesome. And it's also a good reminder that I need suggestions for non-sewing speakers. I know we have folks in here who don't sew. So if you know non-sewing speakers, please let us know.
Hi, Claire DeLucchi, and this is my favorite Sandra Betsina t-shirt pattern, so the fact that we were talking about her earlier. But I first made this fabric that I just love that I'd gotten at PIQF with the faces and all, and I shared this at Monday Muse, and someone on Monday Muse said, did you know that these squiggles are shorthand? And they then translated and read aloud to the rest of us what it said. But I had made this fabric I loved into a tunic, which I hated, took apart, recut it into my favorite Sandra t-shirt, didn't have enough, so I had to piece the sleeves, so I just used echo stitching and black thread and just had a great time with it. And then this is a challenge garment. I started for Penwag when we did challenges twice a year.
And the receipt in the bag says 2008.
So the challenge was in 2008, and Merv and Judith, who were doing the challenges at the time, I did finish my Railroad Baroness vest because it's railroad tracks all over it, and it has railroad stitching. And I had to redo it because Marcy Tilton patterns are very loose on the body, and I really wanted a more tailored look. And yes, the buttons I bought in London. So anyway, next.
So I'm here wearing one of my other hats. I'm the president of San Francisco Science Fiction Conventions Incorporated, and we are the hosts of Costume Con 39 next April.
Give me a second to get this actually.
Yes, and I have some help from Andy. We just announced a second guest of honor, is it Laura Downer?
Beverly Downer.
Beverly Downer, who is
Beverly Downen.
Downen. I should have made Andy do this. Beverly Downen, who is a costumer and prop builder. And we're very excited. We also have somebody nicknamed Evil Ted, who is also a costumer and prop builder. But we are still in the early bird registration rates. I know I mentioned earlier, we managed to make our payment on the hotel, so we still have a convention. But if you haven't signed up, the number of techniques and inspirations a wearable artist can get at Costume Con are amazing. And it is not all sewing. There is lots of gluing and painting, and I never thought of using that that goes on. So Costume Con 39, find us online and register and all that fun stuff. And there are flyers at the back table if you're here in person.
And you're gonna put it in the newsletter?
I will put it in the newsletter again, yes.
So Beverly literally wrote the book on using foam in costume and clothing.
Beverly wrote the book on using foam in costume and clothing. We'll talk.
We'll talk. Come on over. Right there, perfect.
Carol Parker again. This is a blank that I got from drama training. This is tie-dye with eye-dye. Capitals, small I, capital D, small Y-E. And it's a product that you can throw in the washing machine. It won't hurt your washing machine. It hasn't hurt my machine, and I've used it lots of times. And so I wanted to see if I could do tie-dye with eye-dye, and the answer is, I think yes.
Cool. Cool. Thank you. Excellent.
Hi, I'm Kay Knox. Last month at our meeting, there were free blue sample vests. This was an extra large. So I just took it. And then I started thinking what I could add to it. And I had lots and lots of shibori that I've dyed before. So a lot of times I start with the pockets. So I did the pockets.
Turn those to the camera, please.
Turn them.
Yeah, I just want to see the pocket. There you go. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, now the back,
And
now the back.
pocket and back.
Groovy.
So I always love free things, and so it's all free. And happy to give the samples.
Thank you. Yep. What you can't see is Laura has a dog that is learning how to be a service dog now.
Yes, this is Georgianne. She's a guide dog puppy in training. She's 8 months old. I had this fabric that I was planning on doing some quilting with, and I decided that I wouldn't get around to that. So I decided I would make it into a top, but I didn't have enough fabric. So I pieced the back so that it would look like the fabric, and then use some other coordinating fabric so I'd have enough for a whole top.
So wait, the front is fabric that's made like that, the back you match to the front?
Yes.
Go on over there.
That's great. I'm Jerry Reynolds, and this is a top that I made using pieces of Japanese fabrics that I got at a temple sale in Japan. So I just pieced them together in a self-dress.
You need to just keep the mic to your mouth.
The pattern is, I made it myself, self-drafted, and there's a piece of it.
Well, thank you everyone for doing that. And I realized I forgot to plug the November program. So it's Amber Young is coming. She's a local Bay Area artist, and you may know her or you may not. She specializes in making things out of vintage tablecloths, beautiful, like the ones that have all the cut work. I can't remember what they're called, and crocheted, and just absolutely gorgeous stuff. She sells at PIQF, so you may have seen her there and you may remember her. So she's going to do a trunk show, and then it's our last workshop of the year. She's going to show us how to take a commercial pattern. It's a Berta that you have to buy used online, so you need to look for it. And I will send information out to people who registered. But she's going to show us how to modify that so you can use all of the cool corners and edges on these tablecloths, and how you can make a swing jacket, which is flattering on just about everybody. So we have 6 folks registered, which means we have room probably for another 6 or 7 people. Some information will go out in advance about what size tablecloth and what kind you could get and the pattern that you need to do. We only have, I think, 4 hours, so you probably won't end up with a finished garment. But for me, the key thing that I want to learn how to do is how to take those edges and incorporate them in, and how to work with that so that I show every single advantage. So we'll get the pattern ready, and she'll show you some things about cutting out, and you may get your sewn. And there will be more information coming out, but I highly encourage you to register now, because you're going to want to have some time to pick up the pattern and to pick out whatever you're going to sew. All right, and that is is it for today. So thank you for our Zoom team. Great to see you in person. Great to have you online, and we will see you next month for Amber's presentation.
Yep. Stop.